The clock has no face here, only a thin second hand in the form of sound, metal tapping metal somewhere beyond the wall, a slow drip that doesn't seem to fall so much as hesitate, the faint scratch of a pencil that keeps stopping as if the graphite is listening. A man sits with his sleeves rolled high enough to show his forearms. He has done it the same way each time, folding the cuffs twice, then pressing the crease with his thumb. He looks down at the skin as if expecting it to tell him what hour it is. The hair on his arm lies flat, smoothed by habit. He rubs at a spot of dried ink near the wrist and then stops, because there is nothing else to do with his hands without making it look like he is waiting. Across from him, a kettle gives off a low, steady whisper. Not a boil, not even a simmer, just the sound of water warming in its own pace. Beside it, a chipped mug sits ready, turned so the crack in the glaze faces away. Someone thought about that. Someone arranged the crack to be unseen, as if the room is kept together by small decisions like hiding down. There is a map on the table, but it is folded shut. The paper edges are softened, worn at the corners where thumbs have worried them. A rubber band holds it tight, a cheap brown band that has been stretched and stretched again until it no longer snaps back the way it used to. It sits there like a promise that has lost its strength. A chair scrapes gently, not dragged, lifted and set down, careful not to wake whatever is sleeping under the floorboards. The man who moved it clears his throat once, and then, after a beat, clears it again, as if the first attempt didn't count. He adjusts his cap, pulls it lower, then pushes it back. The motion repeats without his noticing, a loop that doesn't solve anything. Somewhere outside, a vehicle passes at a moderate speed, tires on gravel. The sound fades. No one looks up. Vehicles pass. They always do. The world keeps moving in ways that mean nothing until they mean everything. The door is not locked, but it might as well be. It stays closed by a kind of agreement. People come and go only when someone else says they should. Even the air seems to follow orders. It drifts in through the seams, carries the faint smell of coal smoke and wet wool, and settles again, as if told to. The man with the rolled sleeves taps the table once with his fingertip. A soft, precise sound. Then again, same pressure, same spot. He stops after the second tap, as though 2 is permissible and 3 would admit something. A second man stands by the window, not looking out so much as facing the glass. The pane is dim, the light beyond it thin and colorless. His reflection is stronger than whatever lies outside. He checks his own face in that reflection without intending to, then shifts his weight from one foot to the other. His boot squeaks faintly on the floorboards. He lifts his heel and sets it down again, trying to make the sound disappear by repeating it. On the table there is a stack of papers with the top sheet turned upside down. A deliberate choice. The blank underside shows a few ghost marks where something was written hard enough an impression. The words cannot be read, but the pressure remains. The past, embossed into the present. A pen sits uncapped. The ink at its tip has thickened slightly, a dark bead forming like a thought that won't fall. No one reaches for it. Reaching would mean the waiting is over. A clock ticks somewhere, but it is not in the room. It is behind the wall, or in the corridor, or in another space entirely. An official clock, perhaps, that belongs to the building more than to the people. The tick is steady, indifferent, almost tender in its consistency. It is the only thing that isn't uncertain. The kettle stops whispering for a moment, then begins again. The sound is just different enough to make the man with the rolled sleeves glance toward it. He doesn't move to pour. He simply notes the change, as if collecting small evidence that time is behaving strangely. From the corridor comes the briefest shuffle of footsteps. 2 steps, a pause, then nothing. The room holds its breath, though nobody has inhaled. The standing man by the window turns his head slightly, not enough to look at the door, just enough to show his jaw tightens once, then releases. The muscles in his neck flex and settle. He blinks slowly, twice. The second blink lingers. The seated man drags a fingernail along the edge of the rubber band around the folded. The band vibrates with a tiny hum and then stills. He does it again. Same motion, same sound. A private metronome. On the floor, near the table leg, a small piece of mud dries and cracks. No one notices it splitting apart. It happens quietly, like many things do before they become visible. Someone coughs in the distance. Down the hall, behind a door, maybe in a stairwell. The cough is answered by nothing. No voices. No reassurance, just silence returning to its place. The light in the room does not flicker. It feels as if it could. The bulb hangs from the ceiling on a cord that is slightly twisted, the shade tilted by a fraction. It throws shadows that don't quite match the angles of the furniture. The corners of the room are darker than they should be, as if they are keeping something. The man by the window reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small object. Metal, thin, flat. He rubs it between his fingers without looking down. A token, a key, a coin. It makes no sound. But the movement suggests he is trying to remind himself that matter is real, that he exists in a solid world where consequences arrive when they're supposed to. The seated man finally lifts the pen. He turns it between his fingers once, twice, then sets it down again in the exact same place. He doesn't write. He only confirms the pen is still there. Another shuffle in the corridor, closer this time. The steps are measured, careful, as though the person walking is trying not to be heard, but also cannot help being. The sound stops directly outside the door. No knock. The room tightens around that absence. The kettle whispers. The hidden clock ticks. A breath is taken and held. The man by the window does not turn. The seated man does not reach for the map. Both of them stare at ordinary things. Glass, paper, wood, because looking at the door would make it real. A thin line of light appears under the door as someone shifts their weight on the other side. The line brightens, then dims. A shadow passes over it. Then, finally, the handle gives a faint, deliberate click, and somewhere in the building, the unseen clock keeps ticking as if it knows there isn't much time left. The door opens the way a careful person opens a door when he already knows will find. Not wide, not with urgency. Just enough for the corridor's colder air to slide into the room and rearrange the warmth in quiet, invisible currents. The light from outside is a different color, thinner, grayer, so that the room seems briefly divided into two climates. The familiar stale heat of waiting, and the brisk neutrality of a hallway where people keep moving. A figure fills the gap, not dramatic, not imposing, simply present, wearing the same kind of uniform as everyone else, carrying the same kind of fatigue. He holds a folder under one arm, the paper edges protected by his sleeve, as if the contents might bruise. His cap is pulled low, but not low enough to hide his eyes. His eyes do not scan the room. They land on the table first, on the folded map, on the upside-down page, on the uncapped pen, then lift to faces as if confirming a list of objects that must be in place before the next thing can happen. No one speaks at once. The corridor behind him is visible for a narrow stretch. Bare walls, a strip of worn flooring, another door farther down that is also closed, also not locked in any meaningful way. Somewhere beyond that, a radio murmurs and then goes quiet again, like an animal that has learned not to make sound. The man with the folder steps inside and closes the door behind him with controlled pressure, so it doesn't latch too loudly. Even the final click is softened by his hand, as if he knows the room is fragile. He stays standing. Nobody offers him the chair. It would feel like pretending. The kettle continues its low whisper, stubbornly domestic in a place that has nothing to do with domestic life. The seated man with the rolled sleeves shifts the pen a fraction of an inch, aligning it with the edge of the paper stack. It is a small act of control, performed almost automatically. His fingers are stained at the tips, a faint gray that never washes out completely. He looks up, not directly into the newcomer's eyes, but toward the folder under his arm. The man by the window finally turns, not sharply, just a gradual rotation of shoulders, as if he is turning a heavy object that must not be dropped. His boots make no sound this time. He has learned, or he is trying to. The newcomer clears his throat once. It isn't a nervous habit. It's an opening signal, like a bell rung before a statement. Then he speaks. Not loud, not soft. The voice of someone trained to be heard in a room without forcing attention. The words are measured and stripped of ornament. We're still on schedule. A sentence that should calm. A sentence that should be reassuring. Yet the way he says it, without warmth, without pride, makes it feel like a verdict issued by something impersonal and heavy. He places the folder on the table, not thrown, not slid, set down carefully, parallel to the map. The rubber band on the map vibrates faintly from the contact, humming for an instant, and then stilling. The folder is plain, no markings visible from this angle, no obvious labels, but the paper inside is thick enough to suggest more than a single sheet. The top edge is slightly bent, as if it's been handled repeatedly, carried through multiple rooms, read and reread by hands that did not like what they were reading, but could not put it down. The seated man reaches toward it and stops. He waits, hand hovering, until the newcomer gives a slight nod, permission without ceremony. Then he opens the folder. The first page is dense with typed text, broken by small blocks of numbers, columns, times, quantity, distances. There are margins filled with pencil marks, small corrections, a word circled, a line underlined so hard the paper has almost torn. The man by the window leans in slightly, not to see the words, but to be closer to the moment. His fingers tighten around the thin metal object in his pocket, rubbing it once, twice, an unconscious prayer. The seated man's eyes move across the page in a disciplined way, left to right, down, left again. He does not react at first. He simply reads. His face remains composed, but the skin at his temples tightens. A small pulse appears there and disappears. He turns the page. The paper makes a dry sound, too loud in the room's thin silence. The kettle whispers. The unseen clock ticks. The sound of paper feels like an intrusion. As he reads, the standing man, the one who brought the folder, keeps his gaze fixed on the table, not on faces. He watches how the information lands on paper, as if that is where impact begins. Another page. A diagram this time, lightly printed. Lines, arrows, shaded zone. The shapes are simple enough to be understood quickly, which is exactly what makes them dangerous. They look like certainty. They look like something you can trust, because it has been made neat. The man by the window finally speaks, his voice quiet and level, as if he is trying to keep the air from vibrating too much. Any changes? The newcomer hesitates just long enough to show that the word changes is never simple. He answers with precision. Only adjustment. The seated man makes a small sound in his throat. Not a cough, not a laugh, just the body registering a thought it cannot swallow easily. He taps the page once with his index finger, right beside a column of time. This window, he doesn't say what it is. He doesn't need to. The word window in a room like this doesn't mean glass. It means something else, something measured and closing. The newcomer nods. It's tighter, but still workable. Still workable. Another sentence meant to comfort. Another sentence that carries the weight of a machine continuing to turn. The seated man flips back one page, then forward again, confirming he saw what he thinks he saw. He drags the pen closer and uncaps it with a soft, practiced twist. The ink bead at the tip trembles. He writes a single mark in the margin, just a small line, a shorthand note that only he will understand. He underlines something once. He stops. He sets the pen down. In the corridor outside, there is a distant sound, voices, but too far to make out words. It could be laughter. It could be argument. It could be nothing. The room does not respond. The room is insulated by purpose. The man by the window steps closer to the table now, not fully joining, but closing the distance. He angles his head to see the diagram. His brow furrows, then relaxes, as if he has decided not to ask the question that rises naturally from what he's looking at. The seated man's hand rests on the folded map at last. The rubber band presses into his skin. He doesn't remove it. He just holds it, feeling the tension stored in the stretched band, feeling how close it is to snapping without meaning. Communications? He asks. One word. A whole field of risk reduced to a single syllable. The newcomer answers without looking. Same channels, same codes, same silence. Unless necessary, same silence. The phrase lands and settles in the room like dust. Everyone hears it. No one acknowledges that they heard it the way it should be heard. The kettle shifts tone slightly, closer to boil now, but not quite. The man who moved the chair earlier rises and pours into the chipped mug. He pours slowly, to keep the sound down, to keep it from feeling like an interruption. Steam curls upward and disappears into the bulb's dull light. He sets the mug down near the folder, then withdraws, as if he has done something intimate in a room that cannot permit intimacy. The seated man glances at the mug, then at the text again. His eyes pause on a line, then move past it, as if refusing to linger is a form of discipline. He closes the folder halfway, then opens it again, unable to commit to closure. There's a knock this time, not at this door but somewhere deeper in the building. A firm, hollow sound. 2 knocks. A pause. Another knock. It echoes faintly through the corridor walls, like a signal that the building itself is being tested. No one reacts. They have learned the difference between knocks that matter and knocks that are merely part of the building's breathing. The man by the window says carefully, "Weather?" It is a normal question on face. The kind of question people ask to make conversation. But in this room, it is about more than rain. The newcomer's mouth tightens. Clearing by morning. Clearing by morning. A phrase that should feel hopeful. It does not. Clear skies make it easier to see. Clear skies remove excuses. Clear skies expose. The seated man's fingers press into the folder's edge hard enough to whiten his knuckles. He releases. He inhales. Slow. His shoulders lift slightly and settle. He looks at the other man, the one by the window, and there is an unspoken exchange. 2 people recognizing the same shape of inevitability, without naming it. The newcomer shifts his stance, weight moving from one boot to the other. He glances toward the door, then back to the table. He is not impatient. He is timed. There is a difference. From somewhere far away, a faint mechanical clatter rises and falls, a gate being opened perhaps, or a vehicle being started, or something heavy being moved into position. The sound is brief, but it changes the texture of the silence. It adds a new layer, preparation. The seated man closes the folder fully now. The gesture is quiet, but it feels decisive. He rests his palm flat on top of it, as if keeping it from opening again on its own. Then we proceed, he says. It is not an order. It is an acknowledgement of a path that has already been laid. The man by the window nods once. The newcomer nods once. The room does not relax. The room becomes narrower, as if time itself has been pulled tighter around their bodies. Outside, the hidden clock keeps ticking in its own steady way. Inside, every ordinary sound, the kettle's whisper, the scrape of paper, the soft exhale of breath, begins to feel like part of a countdown. And somewhere beyond this building, morning is coming too quickly. The first sign is so small it doesn't announce itself as a sign at all. It arrives as a delay, not a dramatic one, not the kind that sends people looking at watches or clearing throats with meaning. Just a pause where something is expected to continue and doesn't, for a fraction longer than it should. A message that takes an extra minute to arrive. A reply that comes back thinner than usual. The kind of thing that disappears the moment someone decides not to think about. In the communications room, a young operator adjusts his headset and waits for the familiar tone that tells him the line is still clean. The tone comes, but it wavers, only briefly, only enough to make him tilt his head as if listening to a voice he almost recognized. He taps the receiver once with his knuckle, a reflex learned early, and the sound steadies. He makes a note in the margin of his logbook, then crosses it out. There is no category for uncertainty. Down the corridor, a runner stops at a doorway he has passed through 100 times before. He hesitates, glancing at the nameplate, as if checking it against a memory that has suddenly softened. The plate hasn't changed. The letters are the same. The door is the same color it was yesterday. He exhales through his nose and knocks, then steps inside and delivers his message in the same neutral cadence he always uses. The man inside nods and waves him away without comment. The runner leaves feeling foolish for having slowed at all. Outside, the sky clears more quickly than expected. Clouds thin and separate, peeling back to reveal a pale, stretched blue. It is the kind of sky people describe as cooperative, a sky that does not interfere. Somewhere, someone remarks on it with mild approval, as if the weather has made a sensible decision. A truck stalls near the gate. The engine coughs once, twice, then goes quiet. The driver sits still for a hands on the wheel, listening. He turns the key again. The engine catches this time, louder than before, and settles into a rough idle. He grimaces, pats the dashboard once, not in anger, more like encouragement, and pulls forward. The guard on duty doesn't mention it. Engines stall. Machines are temperamental. The truck moves on, and the moment is over. In the planning room, the folded map is opened again, not fully, just enough to expose a corner, a line of coastline, a cluster of marks that look harmless when viewed alone. The rubber band is slid down and then back up, never removed. A finger traces a route without pressing, hovering just above the paper as if the ink might still be wet. The man tracing it stops at a point he has stopped at before. He stares there longer than necessary, then lifts his hand and folds the map shut again. He does not say why he paused. A clerk enters with fresh copies of the schedule. The paper is warm from the machine, edges slightly curled. She sets the stack down and straightens, aligning corners. Her hair is pinned too tightly, pulling at the skin near her temples. She asks if there's anything else. The answer is no. She leaves. Outside the room, she lets her shoulders drop and rubs her neck, unaware that the relief itself is misplaced. In the corridor, voices drift in fragments. Should have been yesterday. They said it was fine. Don't see why not. The fragments never assemble into a full sentence. They pass each other like trains in the night, close enough to feel the vibration, never close enough to exchange passenger. A radio crackles and goes silent. Someone adjusts the dial, searching for the precise position where the signal is strongest. It comes and goes, fading at the edges like a thought that refuses to sharpen. The operator shrugs and leaves it where it is. The message, when it arrives, will arrive. A man checks his watch and frowns. The watch is accurate. It has been checked and rechecked against the official clock. The frown is not about the time. It is about the feeling that time is behaving differently than it should, stretching in some places, slipping in others. He presses the watch face with his thumb, as if that might correct it, then lowers his arm and continues walking. In the mess, coffee is poured and forgotten. A mug sits on the edge of a table, steam rising and thinning into nothing. Someone bumps the table lightly while passing, and the coffee ripples but does not spill. No one notices how close it comes. No one notices how the surface settles again, smooth and deceptive. A conversation stops mid-sentence when a door opens. It resumes afterward with different words, the original thought abandoned. Neither speaker remembers exactly what they were saying before the interruption. They laugh it off. It wasn't important. A pencil breaks while being sharpened. The graphite snaps inside the wood with a soft, disappointing sound. The man holding it sighs, taps the broken pencil against the desk, and reaches for another. He tosses the broken one into a small metal bin already half full of similar fragments. The bin rattles when the pencil lands. The sound echoes more than expected. He looks at it then turns away. At the edge of the compound, a sentry notices movement where there shouldn't be any. Just a flicker, a shift in the tree line that doesn't match the wind. He raises his binoculars, scans slowly, then lowers. Nothing. The trees stand as they always have. He adjusts his stance and tells himself he's been staring too long. When the relief comes, it feels earned. A report arrives missing a page. Not an important page, everyone agrees. A supplementary sheet, a clarification. The main body is intact. The conclusions remain unchanged. Someone suggests checking the copy machine. Someone else suggests the page will turn up. A third person shrugs and says it probably wasn't needed anyway. The report is stamped and filed. In the command room, a chair scrapes softly as someone leans back. The sound is louder than intended. Heads turn, then turn back. The man in the chair murmurs an apology that no one acknowledges. He sits forward again, elbows on knees, eyes on the floor. His boot taps once, then stills. He folds his hands together to keep them from. A clock on the wall runs slow, only by seconds. Only enough to be noticed by someone who has been counting. The maintenance log says it was serviced last week. The note is initialed, dated, confirmed. The man who notices the slowness does not report it. There are clocks everywhere. One of them is bound to drift. In the distance, something heavy is moved again. Metal on metal. A dull, effortful sound. It repeats, then stops. The silence afterward feels incomplete, as if the sound should have continued longer. It doesn't. The men nearby exchange a glance and then look away, each assuming the other knows what it means. A message is repeated, not because it wasn't heard, but because repeating it feels safer than letting it stand alone. The repetition is identical, word for word, tone for tone. It lands the same way both times. No one questions it. No one asks why it needed saying twice. The map is opened again, this time a little wider. The crease resists, then gives. The paper sighs. Fingers smooth it down, flattening hills and rivers into obedient shapes. A mark that was added earlier is there, exactly where it was placed. The man who added it studies it, then draws a second, smaller mark beside it. He hesitates, then erases the second mark carefully, brushing away the crumbs of graphite with the side of his hand. He leaves the first mark untouched. Someone laughs somewhere. It is a normal laugh, short, unforced. The kind that comes from a remark that doesn't matter. The sound echoes faintly, then disappears. The building absorbs it without comment. A door that is usually open is closed. No sign explains why. No one remembers who closed it. A hand reaches for the handle, stops, then moves on. It can stay closed for now. The kettle, forgotten earlier, has boiled itself dry. When someone notices, the metal is already too hot. A sharp smell hangs in the air. The kettle is removed from the heat and set aside. The damage is done, but minor. The kettle will still work. It always does. A man opens his mouth to speak, and doesn't. The thought that rose to his lips is not urgent. It is not even fully formed. It is more a shape than a sentence. He waits for it to sharpen. It doesn't. He closes his mouth and looks down at his notes instead, feeling a vague irritation he cannot explain. Outside, the light shifts again. Shadows shorten, then lengthen in a way that feels out of sequence. The sun is where it should be. The effect is only noticeable if you are paying attention. Most people aren't. Another delay. Another pause where something should continue and doesn't. A reply that comes back with a word missing. A confirmation that confirms less than it should. Each one is dismissed individually. Together, they form nothing that can be pointed to. The building breathes. Paper moves. Boots pass. Voices murmur and fade. Everything still works. Everything still holds. And because of that, no one notices how many small chances have already slipped quietly past, unclaimed, as time continues forward without asking permission. The moment does not announce itself as final. It arrives disguised as opportunity, a narrow interval where movement is still possible, where a hand could reach out and alter the angle of what is already in motion. The air feels denser now, as if the building has inhaled and not yet decided whether to exhale. Sounds carry differently. Footsteps seem closer than they are. Voices feel louder even when they are not raised. In the command room, a message sits on the desk longer than it should. It has been delivered. It has been acknowledged. It has not been acted upon. The paper lies flat, its corners aligned with the grain of the wood, its text clear and unambiguous, in the way that only carefully drafted language can be. A finger rests on its edge, not pressing, just making contact, as if to confirm that it exists. The man whose finger touches the page reads the same line again. He does not discover anything new in it. He is not hoping to. He is measuring how it feels to see the words one more time. Across the room, someone shifts position, the chair legs making a brief involuntary protest against the floor. The sound is enough to draw a glance. The glance is enough to create a pause. The pause stretches, thin and elastic, until someone speaks simply to break it. Still within range, the words are factual. They are meant to settle the room. They do, but only on the surface. Beneath them, something continues to tighten. A clock is checked, then checked again by someone else, as if confirmation from another angle might produce a different result. It does not. The time agrees with itself. That is the problem. In a nearby room, a radio operator removes one side of his headset and rubs his ear. The skin there is sore from pressure. He adjusts the band, fits it back into place, and listens. The signal is present. The signal is weak. He opens his mouth to report the weakness, then closes it again when the signal strengthens just enough to make the report feel unnecessary. He tells himself that fluctuations are normal. They always are. A door opens and closes somewhere down the hall. The sound echoes faintly, then fades. A different door opens and does not close right away. Voices drift through the gap, low, controlled, stripped of inflection. The door closes. The voices vanish. A map is spread wider now, not fully flat, just enough to expose the lines that matter. Fingers trace borders that are not borders anymore, roots that have been driven into memory through repetition. A thumb presses at a crease that refuses to lie down. The paper pushes back. It remembers its folded shape. "This here," someone says. The phrase hangs in the air, unfinished. A fingertip taps once at a point on the map, then withdraws. No one asks what "here" means. Everyone already knows. A man standing near the wall clears his throat. The sound is quiet, almost apologetic. He waits. No one looks at him. He considers speaking anyway, the thought rising in him like a slow tide. He imagines the sentence forming. Hears how it would sound in the... He imagines the responses, nods, counterpoints, the gentle erosion of his concern under calm assurances. The tide recedes. He swallows and stays silent. In the corridor, a runner stops short of the command room and looks down at his notes. The paper trembles slightly in his hand, not from fear, but from exertion. He has moved quickly to be on time. He straightens the pages, smooths them with his palm, and waits for the signal to enter. The signal does not come immediately. He stands there, breathing, counting his breaths without realizing he is doing it. Inside, someone asks for clarification. Not because they are confused, but because asking feels like movement. The answer comes back precise and confident. It addresses the question exactly as asked, and nothing more. The person who asked nods, satisfied in the way people are when they have been answered without being challenged. The kettle is filled again. Water pours in, cold and metallic sounding. The kettle is set back onto the heat. The familiar whisper begins anew. The cycle resets. Someone watches the process with an intensity that doesn't match its importance, as if the small ritual might anchor something larger. A pencil is sharpened carefully this time. Slow turns, light pressure. The graphite emerges intact. The pencil is tested on a scrap of paper, leaving a clean line. The scrap is folded once, then again, then tucked into a pocket. No one needs it. No one throws it away. The radio crackles. Just once. Just enough to draw attention. The operator straightens, hand hovering near the controls. The crackle does not repeat. He exhales and forces his shoulders down. He writes a time in his logbook and underlines it. He does not write what happened, only when. Outside, the light has shifted to something sharper. Edges are more defined. Shadows fall with more confidence. The cooperative sky now feels exposed, stripped of cover. Someone remarks on the clarity again, this time without approval. The comment drifts away without response. A message arrives that could change something. It is not dramatic. It does not demand immediate action. It suggests an alternative, an adjustment, a slight delay, a reconsideration of sequence. The language is cautious, respectful. It offers an opening without pushing. The message is read. It is passed to another set of hands. It is read again. The room absorbs it quietly. Someone says, "We don't have time to recalibrate." Someone else says, "It's a narrow margin, but it holds." No one says that margins fail without warning. The message is set aside, not dismissed, just placed slightly apart from the others. It remains visible. It remains possible. For a moment the room balances. The map, the message, the clock, the kettle whispering toward boil. All of it suspended in a fragile equilibrium. The man who brought the message watches the others' faces. He looks for signs, tension, doubt, urgency. He finds professionalism instead, composure, the practiced calm of people who have been trained not to panic and have mistaken that skill for certainty. He considers speaking again. He considers adding something not written on the page. He does not know how to phrase it without sounding alarmist. He does not want to be the one who introduces emotion into a room that prides itself on restraint. He says nothing. A hand reaches out and moves the message closer to the stack of approved paper. Not on top, not buried, just closer. That movement is small, almost invisible. It takes less than a second. It changes the balance. The clock ticks. The time window, never named, never formalized, narrows by degrees too fine to measure without instruments no one has. The room feels it anyway, a subtle compression, a tightening in the chest that is dismissed as fatigue. A voice asks, "Any objections?" The question is routine. It is asked because it is supposed to be asked. Silence follows. Not heavy, not dramatic, just empty. Silence, in this room, has learned to sound like agreement. The man near the wall opens his mouth again. The sentence returns, fully formed this time. It is clear. It is simple. It is too late to introduce it without explanation. He closes his mouth. Then we move forward, someone says. No one marks the moment. No one looks at the clock. No one stands or sits or signals. The decision does not feel like a decision. It feels like continuity. The runner in the corridor is finally waved in. He steps forward, delivers his notes, and waits. The notes are received, scanned, and nodded over. They confirm what is already assumed. He is thanked and dismissed. He leaves, feeling lighter for having completed his task, unaware that the relief is temporary. The kettle reaches a boil. Steam rises. Loud now, insistent. Someone removes it from the heat and pours. The sound fills the room for a moment, masking the quieter sounds beneath it. The tick of the clock, the soft shift of paper, the collective exhale that follows an unspoken conclusion. When the pouring stops, the room is quieter than before. The message that could have changed something is no longer central. It is still there. It is simply no longer reachable without effort. And effort, at this point, would require admitting that the moment has weight, that this stretch of time is not endless, that it is closing even as everyone continues to behave as though there will be another chance to reconsider. Outside, something heavy is set into place. Metal settles. Locks engage. The sound is final without being loud. Inside, the clock ticks on, steady and concerned, as the last workable seconds thin into something else, something already slipping beyond reach. It happens without ceremony, no signal, no raised voice, no shift in posture dramatic enough to mark the instant. The room does not register the change. It feels, instead, like a continuation that has gone on slightly too long. A document is stamped. The sound is dull and administrative, a rubber thud against paper. It should mean nothing more than acknowledgement. It does not echo. It does not draw attention. It simply exists, permanent in a way that ink and pressure can. The stamp is lifted. The paper is slid into a folder. The folder is closed. The action is small, contained, irreversible. A man exhales through his nose and does not realize he has been holding his breath. The release is quiet, almost relieved. For a moment, there is the subtle comfort of finality, the sense that something has been settled, that the burden of consideration has been set down. In the communications room, a switch is flipped from one position to another. The label beneath it is faded. The operator hesitates only long enough to confirm he has the right switch, then moves it decisively. The indicator light changes color. Nothing else happens. No alarm, no confirmation tone, just a new state replacing the old one. He makes a note in the logbook and underlines it once. He does not underline the time. He underlines the action. Down the corridor, a door that has been closed all morning is opened and stays open. Not wide, just enough. Air moves differently because of it. Sound travels farther. A draft brushes against papers and lifts their corners before settling. No one comments on the change. It is practical. It allows for easier passage. A guard at the gate receives a brief instruction. It is spoken plainly, without emphasis. The guard nods, repeats it back to confirm, and adjusts his position. He plants his feet more firmly, shifts the strap on his shoulder, and faces forward. He has performed this adjustment many times before. It feels routine. It feels safe. In the planning room, the map is folded, not loosely, carefully. Along the creases it has learned. The rubber band is removed at last, stretched once between fingers, then looped back into place. The tension is restored. The map is returned to its shelf, slid between other maps that look nearly identical from the outside. When the shelf is closed, the map disappears from sight. A chair is pushed back and tucked neatly under the table. The sound is controlled. The gesture suggests tidiness, not conclusion. A man straightens the stack of papers in front of him, aligns their edges, and places them into a drawer. The drawer closes with a muted click. He turns the key halfway, then stops, deciding not to lock it. The key remains in the drawer. A voice says, "That's it then." Not triumph, not dread, just acknowledgement. No one responds. The kettle, forgotten again, sits cool. The water inside it is no longer useful. It will be poured out later. For now, it occupies space on the stove, a relic of a moment that's passed without being noticed. In the radio room, the signal stabilizes, clearer than it has been all morning. The operator notes the improvement with mild surprise, then accepts it. He adjusts the headset, settles back into his chair, and listens. The silence between transmissions feels intentional, structured, assigned. A man checks the clock and nods once. Not because the time is good, because it is no longer flexible. In a different part of the building, a piece of equipment is powered on. The machine hums as it comes to life. Vibrations traveling through the floor and into the walls. The sound is steady, reliable. It has been tested. It has passed inspection. The technician who activates it stands with his hand on the casing for a moment longer than necessary, feeling the warmth build, feeling the reassurance of motion. He removes his hand and steps away. A message is sent that cannot be unsent. The wording is neutral, professional. It contains no trace of doubt. The person who sends it reads it once more before transmitting, making sure there are no errors. He considers adding a clarifying, then decides against it. The message is complete as it is. When it leaves entirely. The man near the wall, the one who almost spoke earlier, leans forward as if he might stand, then settles back again. The moment has shifted. He feels it, though he cannot point to what has changed. The sentence he prepared has lost its place. There is nowhere to insert it without tearing something. He rubs his hands together slowly, a gesture meant to warm them. The room is not cold. Outside, a vehicle moves into position and stops. The engine idles. The driver waits. He checks his mirrors, adjusts his seat, and rests his hands on the wheel. He does not look at the building. He has been told not to. He focuses on the space ahead of him, empty for now. A bell rings somewhere in the distance. Not an alarm, a timing signal. The sound is faint, carried by air and architecture, but it reaches the building clearly enough to be recognized. Conversations pause for half a second, then resume, altered slightly by the interruption. The bell does not ring again. In the command room, the folder that once held the undecided message is now indistinguishable from the others. It sits in a stack. It has a place. It belongs. A hand reaches for it and stops, hovering just above the surface. The fingers curl and relax. The hand withdraws. Someone says, "We'll monitor." Monitoring is safe. Monitoring suggests control. Monitoring implies that if something shifts, it will be noticed. No one says what happens if the shift comes too quickly. A door closes softly. This time, it is locked. The sound is unmistakable to anyone listening. The click is final, mechanical, clean. The key turns. The mechanism engages. The hallway beyond the door becomes separate, contained. The building feels heavier, as if weight has been added to it without changing its shape. A clock ticks. The tick does not sound different than it did before. The difference is not in the sound. It is in the fact that the tick now marks time that can no longer be used to change direction. The last small opportunity passes without recognition. No one points to it. No one marks it in a logbook. It slips by in the space between two ordinary actions. A hand lowering, a breath taken, a glance redirected. From this moment on, everything that follows will feel like continuation. Momentum does not announce itself. It does not need to. It has already taken hold. Nothing moves at first. Not because there is nothing left to do, but because everything that needed doing has already been done. The building settles into this knowledge without resistance. It exhales slowly, beams and walls adjusting to a new balance they were always meant to hold. The hum of machinery continues somewhere below, steady and even. It does not accelerate. It does not falter. It occupies the space where doubt once lived. In the command room, chairs remain where they are. Papers lie flat. Hands rest on surfaces without gripping them. People are present without actively participating in anything. The posture of waiting has returned, but it is different, less open, more contained. Waiting no longer suggests possibility. It suggests sequence. A clock ticks. Each second lands cleanly, evenly spaced, indifferent to what it measures. No one looks at it and they have stopped checking. The time is no longer something that can be argued. In the corridor, footsteps pass and fade. They are unhurried, purposeful, but not urgent. The people walking know where they are going. They have been told. The floorboards absorb the sound and release it gently, like a memory already losing detail. A radio transmission begins and ends without comment. A few words, coordinates, confirmation. The operator listens, acknowledges, and logs the exchange. His handwriting is neat, consistent. He pauses after finishing the entry, pen hovering above the page, then closes the book and sets it aside. The pen is capped. The page will not be added to. Outside, the sky holds its clarity. The light is bright, but flat, stripped of warmth. Shadows lie directly beneath objects, compressed and sharp. There is no movement in the leaves do not stir. Flags hang slack. The stillness feels intentional, as if the world has decided to cooperate by stepping out of the way. A man at the gate shifts his weight and steadies himself. He adjusts his grip on his equipment, feeling the familiar texture beneath his finger. He inhales, slow and deep, then exhales through his nose. The breath fogs the air briefly and disappears. He does not look back. He does not need to. In the planning room, the map remains on the shelf. Its presence is felt more than remembered. It no longer calls attention to itself. Its work is finished. The creases rest in darkness, holding the shape they were forced into. A cup is lifted and set down again, without being drunk from. The liquid inside has cooled. The surface is still. The cup makes a soft sound against the table that feels louder than it should. No one reacts. Sound no longer demands reaction. The man who almost spoke earlier stands alone near. He watches nothing in particular. His eyes drift from one ordinary object to another. The edge of a desk, a scuff on the floor, the shadow cast by a chair leg. His thoughts move just as quietly, circling a sentence that no longer has a place to land. He exhales and lets it go. There is relief in not carrying it. A door opens briefly and closes again. The movement changes the air pressure in the room just enough to be noticed. Then everything returns to stillness. The lock does not engage this time. It does not need to. In the distance, the machine's hum deepens by a fraction. Not enough to suggest malfunction. Not enough to trigger concern. Just enough to mark progression. A phase completed. Another begun. The radio remains silent. Not empty. Silent with intention. The silence has structure now. It means that everything is aligned. That nothing requires clarification. Someone clears their throat and stops. The sound feels unnecessary. They press their lips together and remain still. Breathing slows. Bodies adjust to the pace set for them. A bell does not ring. It was expected to, once. It does not. No one remarks on its absence. The timing has passed. The bell is no longer relevant. Outside, the vehicle idles. The engine vibration travels through the ground and into the soles of boots, up through bone and muscle. It is a grounding sensation, oddly calming. The driver's hands rest lightly on. He stares ahead, eyes unfocused, seeing distance without measuring. Inside the building, a light flickers once and steadies. The moment is brief, almost imaginary. A person glances up, confirms the light is still on, and looks away. Electrical systems fluctuate. They always have. The clock ticks. The space between ticks feels thicker now, as if time itself has gained weight. Each second arrives, occupies the room, and lingers before yielding to next. The effect is subtle. It is felt, rather than noticed. A breath is taken and held, not consciously. The body does it on its own, responding to something it recognizes without understanding. Muscles tighten, then ease. The breath is released slowly. No one speaks. There is nothing left to say that would alter the shape of what is coming. Words would only move air. Outside, the light shifts again, not toward darkness, toward intensity, the kind of brightness that erases detail rather than revealing it. The horizon looks thin, stretched, as if the world has been pulled taut. Inside, the final preparations complete themselves without human hands. Systems settle, timers run, processes continue along paths set earlier, triggered by actions already taken and decisions already sealed. Nothing accelerates. Nothing stops. The building listens to itself. Pipes hum faintly. Walls hold. Floors remain steady. Everything performs exactly as designed. The clock ticks. A second passes. Another. No one marks them. Somewhere beyond this place, close enough to matter, far enough to be abstract, forces align in ways that can no longer be adjusted by conversation or reconsideration. The motion is silent, invisible, already committed. Inside the command room, a man closes his eyes for just a moment, not to pray, not to reflect, simply to rest them. When he opens them again, nothing has changed. The stillness deepens. It is no longer waiting for instruction. It is waiting for consequence. The final fraction of time stretches thin, translucent, fragile as glass held up to the light. It does not shatter. It does not move forward. It holds. And in that held breath, just before anything happens, the world pauses, balanced on the edge it has already crossed.